Hello, hello, hello. I'm making a video. And it is nice out here. And I hope it doesn't start raining right now because I have to make a video and we also have to do some garden work next. So I just want to show the Argentinian pink pampas grass. It is gorgeous in its full bloom. Absolutely gorgeous. And it feels like you are surrounded by ancient horsetail type of plants, like in the Jurassic, where the dinosaurs lived. They had stuff like this growing around them in jungles and swamps and wetlands, and it was nice. It was very, very nice. It was a nice era. Yeah, it was. So I don't know what triggered all of these catastrophes for the dinosaurs, but it was horrific what they had to go through. Absolutely horrific. And only the real little dinosaurs, the ones that you can put in your pocket, they survived because they went into caves and crevices and they were able to stay warm and protected there from the meteorites and from the ice age and so on. Yes, and then from those evolved our lineage and the dog's lineage and the rat's lineage and the whale's lineage. All of those came out of those little pocket dinosaurs. Yeah, that's what happened. That's nice. So, last night I had trouble falling asleep because I was absolutely terrified thinking about these stories that John Allen Ballon or Allen, John M. Allen was telling about. And Mr. Ballon, he calls himself, because he has a lot of balls. That guy has balls. So, it's, yeah, it's very nice. And he's very compassionate, very cool. Very nice the way he narrates these events from people. It's very, very nice. But some of these stories are very, very frightening to say the least. Very frightening. So, and then there's another guy called, he had his channel is called What Lurks Beneath, and he talks about like the real spectacular stuff, like werewolves and alien abductions and stuff like this. So that guy's telling stories that are so wild and like just made for movies, the regular horror movies and stuff. That makes it less believable, but then again, I don't even know what is reality anymore. I really don't. And Elon Musk also said, we might live in a computer simulation. So, in of some real elaborate computer simulation where the players are playing tricks on us, literally. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. There could be players behind players behind players behind players indefinitely, and all of that is called the creation process. That is what creation is. Creation. The word creation. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, when there is no self, as in self idea, the idea of self importance, or the idea of self as the center of the universe or something like this, which the ego does all the time. If there's no ego, and the ego's self narrative, then what is left is creation. Okay. So when I'm making artwork, in that moment, my ego, myself, is at peace. You know? It's not agitated. It's not functional. It's not active. It's not in action. I am one with the infinite cosmos. Okay. I'm protected by the blue God at all times. And I'm in that creation process. I am flowing modern art. And it is the infinite cosmos because I am one with the infinite cosmos. So you can say I'm a vessel for the infinite cosmos that flies through me. I'm just a phone or a messenger. I'm a messenger device, sort of, yeah. But I am that. Not just a messenger device, but I am the infinite cosmos because my body is, okay, and your body is. But the ego wants to separate itself from that. So when I'm in that creation process, I am not in a struggle. And when I'm not in a struggle, when I'm not in this torturous, tormenting, agonizing ego ego drive, ego grind. When I'm not in that, then my brain is clear and I am in the creation process. I'm creating. And the creation process is unlimited. And in the same sense, maybe a giant kid is in the creation process of assembling his dollhouse of different characters and figures, and I'm one of those. And he decides to set me afoot here and there and make my life hard, or some people suffer much worse physically. I suffer psychologically, but it's the ego. Maybe I am a computer program that once in a while elopes that grinding struggle of ego dependency. And then I have agency in that moment. Then I have the agency of being just that natural being that, being that, whatever we are. without importance, without ego, without credentials, without diplomas hanging on the wall, without attributions of importance or like VIP. I mean, that's like the epitome of neurosis. Hierarchy is the epitome of neurosis. War is neurosis. It's a neurotic movement, as Jiddu Krishnamurti said. The moment that falls away, I am a creator. I am not important. I am that. I am the infinite. I am part of the infinite. I'm a particle of the infinite. I'm an ant of the infinite. It flows through me, but it is me in that moment. Because my body, our bodies are already part of the infinite. Why do you need to attribute something important to it? You don't. And anyone who mutilates their body with plastic surgery, that's the ultimate neurosis. That's the ultimate lie to yourself. It is the ultimate painful disconnect and struggle. And it is bypassing your purpose of existence. Don't mutilate yourself. Don't body pierce. Don't make your skin a different color. Don't tattoo yourself. Don't pierce yourself. Don't probe into your brain. Some people do that. Don't hurt yourself. Your body is your vessel of existence. This is just a vessel. It's a modality. Okay. And your mind is not bound to it. Your mind is much bigger than this vessel is. But while we have the vessel, be good to that vessel. This is your mothership. This mothership consists of trillions of cells, and they're alive. Cells. There are little mites in there sometimes, and they tickle you. But they don't hurt your cells. They just tickle your neuronal dendritic reception points. That's all they do, and that signals to the brain to scratch yourself here. But this is full of body cells, your iris, okay? The cells, okay? Like the jellyfish in the ocean. It's the same material. And it's formed like this so you can see. Okay? You see through a biological blobfish, basically. All of this is amazing. And it evolved. It took a long time to evolve like this. The trial and error. Those that had a better iris survived. So that's all there is to it. Okay. And he did too. He has a lot of abilities that we don't have. He has also, he has unbelievable psychic power, psychic and supernatural abilities. Incredible. We can't even wrap our heads around that. And he understands a lot. He understands language. So I'm always surprised because I never had a dog before him who was that mentally agile and flexible and quick, very quick to understand. But they only live in the now. They don't live in the past or the future. They don't have that. Because past and future is ego narrative. Okay? and they're pretty much free from that. I mean, they're like 99% more free from that than we are. Whatever they have, rudimentary forms of ego, is not near as, can't even be compared to the human ego. And that's that is the downfall of the human species, is that ego. And chimpanzees have it too. So, but they can't do as much damage to the planet with their ego. And their ego is not near as crazy convoluted as the humans. So, but they come next in line when it comes to ego activity. So they have done terrible things because of ego. Chimpanzees have, just because of ego. They have bitten people's heads off because of ego. That's why you should not have an adult chimpanzee as a pet. Okay, that's not a good idea. And they shouldn't be in a cage. No animal should be in a cage. They should be where they belong. I guess Africa, into a tropical area, into a wetland, into a jungle, okay, where they can climb up on trees. They have their drama there and all of this, but they can't bite someone's head off or cause damage to the environment. So the damage to the environment is done by humans because of greed, and that's ego. That's the self idea. It's an idea, because underneath there is no importance. Nobody's important. We're not important. Okay. We're precious. That's something else. Okay. That's something altogether different. Precious. All cells, all beings are precious, but not important in the sense of self idea or self narrative. Okay, so it's a very, very important message. That the only way I can use the word important is when I say this message is important. This message has, let's put it this way, this message has power. Okay. And our language is also, we use the same words for this and for that. So that makes it sometimes seem contradictory. That's why people thought G.D. Krishnamurti and David Bohm contradicted themselves, but they didn't. They were just using a language that is extremely limited, that doesn't have the vast variety of nuances in it that should be used in order to express that what they want to convey to the world. So we have to keep in mind the language has extreme limitations, because the language comes from also from time and from ego and from narrative and so on. So to use the palette of any human language in order to express the infinite is pretty difficult, or to express the non-self and non-duality. It's pretty difficult to do in order to explain this to a person who is not familiar with this type of terminology, in order to explain these concepts with regular words. So, not easy. We have to actually invent words, which I do sometimes. Sometimes I'm in the creation process, and then I come up with a new word, and I just throw it into the language, just like that, like sprinkle it in. People can be in resistance towards it, and they say, but that's not in the dictionary. That's not in the dictionary. Thou shalt not use it, right? Wrong. I can use any word I want to. I can make up a word like infinitive of God. I say that to my dogs. Infinitive of God. So, but it comes, of course, it comes from our language. Infinitive, God. But I add an extra syllable to it because it sounds cuter. And I also invent words that fill in the gaps where the language doesn't reach. So in order to explain the nuances better, I will come up with new words or word combination also. People do this all the time. I'm not the only one. So that's how a language evolves also. So I want the language to evolve into beauty, into nuances of different forms and colors and expressions and emotions. I don't want the language to revert back in evolution and go back to just angry sounds like, bro, man, hey, man, you, hey, you, yo, bro, like, man, you motherfucker, man. Yeah, this is this is not going anywhere. This is obviously, there's no more grammar, there's no more nuances, there's no variety of words. It goes back to an angry, mouthy sound of whatever lust and anger expressions, and then the language dwindles down, and that's sad. That's why I make myself read. I make myself read books, even though it's a whole lot easier to just watch videos. And then when we watch videos narrated by people that have bad grammar, that is definitely not good for our nervous system. So when they say something wrong, like when they don't use the third past tense, like when they use a sentence like, he should have gone to the store, then he would have prevented this or that from happening. Okay. This is a sentence. This is grammatically correct. But I hear people say he should have went to the store, and then it would have not it would not have happened or whatever. So here's the problem with the word went. When I hear that, I have to correct this in my mind every time. I have to say it to myself. He should have gone. I'm correcting him even though he can't hear me. But when I'm talking to someone in person, I correct them because I correct Paul all the time with this. And he's gotten better at it. Gotten much better. My parents always corrected us with these things, and I'm glad. I'm very glad. Language is something that needs to be cultivated. Okay, that is a tool of expression, And it's a sensitive tool. I'm angry sometimes. I might use the F word, which is not good, but it happens sometimes. But I think we should really make an effort of not even getting into that mental state of anger in the first place. But if we get into it, we shouldn't suppress it. So it's not a big deal or anything, but I think we should always come back to our senses, and we should use language very wisely, particularly when it comes to violent words and violent expressions. We have to really stay away from that, because language is energy. It has an influence on people's minds. Okay, so I used to correct people on the internet in writing. That pisses people off so bad. You have no idea. But I don't do it anymore. I write by example. So if I want to use punctuation, I use punctuation. If I don't want to use punctuation, I don't use punctuation. I very rarely use commas. I only use the dot when I'm really finished with the sentence. Probably not in a live tweet, but in comment form. And I think that's useful so that we don't get misunderstood. But I mean, we can be more flexible with the grammar. Again, whatever is in the dictionary or whatever is in school books is also not the last word on anything. But we should be using language in a nuanced, in a cultivated, and in a wise and in a kind way, in a mindful way. Very, very important that we do this. Yes, you got the fluffy there. You got the fluffy. Oh, you got the fluffy there. That is nice. See, I call the Pampas Cross fluffy because they have such fluffy feathers. Yes, that's a nice Pampas Cross, and it feels good. Yes, and it's nice to chew and shred. It's very good. It's very good. Yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Yes, the fluffy. You got the fluffy, and that feels good. And he likes to go under those lance-shaped leaves. These really really long leaves that are like the meter or 2 meters, like 5 feet long. Some of them. And he likes to brush underneath, like that gives him the tingly feelings, that ASMR. And I saw another dog who was rescued by people. I saw that dog on YouTube, and also looking very similar to him. His name's Oscar, and he does the same thing. So this is definitely genetic. They go underneath these fluffy things and that brushes lightly over their bodies, and they get the tingly feeling. It's very sweet. And he lies also on his back like Oscar does. So very, very cute with the grinning mouth up into the sky. That's nice. Dogs need to be happy. Okay. And they need to be free. I had to report someone yesterday on Facebook. A woman was incarcerating her basset hound. And when she said she's going to incarcerate him for another 5 months, I reported her. And he was desperately trying to get out. He was chewing on the metal bars. And she thought that was funny. That made a funny photo. And most people were like laughing. They weren't even thinking about it. But a few people said something, said, at least said, let him free. And she would say no. And I told her that I would rescue him, I would take him if she doesn't know how to be kind to him and give him what he needs, freedom and love, then she needs to hand him over to someone else. And that just of course it caused a war, but I said I don't mean war, I mean well. And she just got angry and angrier, and so then she, out of spite, she said she's going to incarcerate him for another 5 months, and I reported her to Facebook. And who knows, maybe that uh, isn't even a real person, maybe that is just a hater. One, it could be just one of my haters, so I don't know. It has that hater characteristic. I see faces and stuff. Yeah. But it's all coming from the same energy. It's coming from ego energy. It's coming from whether it's the same person as Zane or Philip Jones or whoever is a hater, or if it's a real person on Facebook, the energy is the same. It's that standoffish, sadistic snicker, temper tantrum, like, you can't tell me what to do. Totally disconnected from another living being and so on. But I report people like this. I first get into an honest exchange of comments, at least honest from my side, and I tell them I'm not going to hold it back. I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to be angry. But I'm going to say it the way it is. I'm going to say this is cruel to incarcerate an animal or any living being. And of course they get mad because I can't reach them, but I have to say it anyway. Okay? And then when they say something nasty like that and make a threat like that, I report them. Or if there's no insight possible, and I see this dog is in danger, this dog is in distress, I report them. I have to. And we should report it. So for now, I just reported it to Facebook. I don't even know what they might do. Maybe I should report it to PETA or the Humane Society. Maybe I should. Maybe we should. I wasn't really thinking about it. I thought Facebook might do something, but I don't know if they do. I think the people at Facebook care about animals. I know that Mark Zuckerberg and his wife care about animals, so they may be driven by, or they, playing good cop, bad cop. That Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Facebook. It's like, oh, Sheryl did it. I didn't. Well, you hired her. So there's greed. But they care about animals. But they're greedy. So I have to use the spray water, unfortunately. If I will spray, I'm not making an empty statement here. I will spray. That is your toy, yes. That is your toy. Not my cooler bag. That one is your joy. The cooler bag you can't have. They need a lot of stimulation. They need a lot of running and roaming, and when I see a pit bull type of dog, Shane, that is the absolute worst atrocity there is, because these dogs are hyperactive and they need space and they need toys like this can there, and they need safe toys. Be careful with that. Don't hurt yourself. Okay. And they need, we at the other house we have more space, so, and we're in the process of getting a very, very large property. So, and then we want to irrigate like 4 acres on that large property and fence it in for him so that he has some space to race around. So every animal needs freedom, and freedom doesn't mean setting a domestic animal just somewhere into the wild where they don't even know how to make it through the winter. That's not freedom. So there's a lot of misunderstandings all the time. Obviously, domestic animals are very, very dependent on humans, on the food, on clothes, on winter protection, on heat, and all of that. It's very, very, very important. But never, never incarcerate a living being. Very important. So, but I'm already talking about a bunch of stuff. I wanted to talk about some things that my mind is on, these stories from John Allen, and the other guy also, was the werewolves. So I don't know. That's just very, very. The werewolf story is so out there that, I mean, is so like it seems so incredibly fake. But then again, I don't even know what is reality anymore. It's also part of this video game that we're in, right? So there are some undercover bioweapon labs, and they are creating chimeras, and yes, this stuff is happening. I heard from other sources too. It's illegal in some countries. It's legal to a point where they experiment around with it, which is totally unethical. Those are living beings too, with feelings. And then who knows? There's an underground lab in a cave in Utah or New Mexico. Who knows? And they're creating chimeras between humans and wolves or dogs, werewolves. That's a mythological figure. This figure, I don't think this figure has ever existed, and neither have Bigfoot monsters. But in those laboratories, who knows what they might or what they might not recreate, but what they might create for the first time. They might come up with all kinds of stuff in there. Most of that doesn't survive. Most of that isn't fit to survive. It is crippled. But who knows? They might work on this for many, many, many years, for 100 years. Maybe they've been working on this breeding programs, and then gene splicing and radiation, whatever. I don't know what they do. And then maybe something like this comes out, a werewolf, chimera, some kind of super predator used for war. They don't need to use that for war. They can use drones. It's much more efficient. But maybe some people have fun with this, Just maybe some people are obsessed with gene splicing and creating something like this, and then setting them free somewhere in Yellowstone. And there was a truck driver, he was driving down a logging road, and all of a sudden there's this werewolf running parallel to the truck. He was not driving fast. I don't know. I guess he was just driving slowly down a some kind of gravel road or something. And then suddenly this werewolf comes running out of the forest, running parallel to his window and looking right at him through the window, like 10 feet tall. And he pulled out a gun and he shot him or her. And he was frightened, of course, naturally. Who can blame him? Maybe this werewolf didn't even want to hurt him. Maybe it was the female in need. So, but he shot her or him, and then he went back to look, and the werewolf had already been removed. And there were people talking about bears fighting. And he didn't tell them what he saw. But I turned the video off at that point. So. But yeah, I don't even know. I don't believe it. I mean, I don't believe it by 99.99999%. I really don't. But there is a tiny little fracture of percentage that I'm agnostic about it. And because I don't know what's real, what's not, what people might be doing, so we don't know. And there's a whole lot of weird stuff going on in the world. You better believe it. I mean, so weird. It's so incredibly freaking weird. You cannot even wrap your head around it. There is weird shit happening in the world, okay? And that's a fact. And that's stuff that is totally unexplainable with current science information. So and some people will just duck their heads into the sand because of it. They'll say it can't be explained, therefore it doesn't exist. That's something that Paul would be saying and doing. Okay. And the scientific world is full of those people that will say, oh, that doesn't exist because it's impossible to exist, even if they see it right in front of them. So if Paul saw Jesus walk on water, he would say this is a trick. Okay. Even if he goes in there and look and feels under the feet in the water, and there is no glass container standing, and he still walks on water right above his head, he would still not believe it. So that's Paul. He has a different brain. He processes things differently. I'm annoyed about this sometimes, but I'm not gonna get mad. This is how he is. This is how a lot of people are. Okay. I am more agnostic because that is the more honest approach to this, to living, to be a percentage agnostic, at least a small percentage agnostic. Agnostic means I don't know, so maybe there's a possibility. I have no idea. So, but there are stories out there that are actually they're hair raising if you have hair on your head. So it's like split hair stands straight up like this. Oh my gosh, boy, wow. Yes, my hair looks a little bit like that pink Argentinian pampas grass from Pampas, Argentina. I pamper my pampas hair a lot. but still split. Yeah, but whatever. Where do I even start? 'Cause there's a couple of stories. One story that Paul told me, I was absolutely, oh my gosh. And he's an atheist and tells me this story suddenly out of the blue. He will suddenly, like, for I've known him for over 20 years. Out of the blue, suddenly he remembers this story. He never remembered it before, but suddenly, because I'm talking about John Allen's stories, so suddenly, oh, it triggered that witch story in Paul. My goodness. So I'm going to start with that. There's a forest called the Elfin Forest. That's not far from San Diego. It's between San Diego and LA, which is kind of strange that there's a forest there, particularly an elfin forest, in totally developed. I don't even think there is any area that is undeveloped between LA and San Diego, but apparently there is one forest left in there. And Paul said that forest burned down several times, also because of rioters and hate group people, Black Lives Matter shit, and all of that. So, and then also before there are always some, because it's so developed. There are so many people living around there that it's full of criminals, and they set forests on fire. It's an atrocity. So, but there was a forest. I don't know how much of that forest is left now, but it's called the Elfin Forest, like from elves. But normally, elves are mythological figures. Those figures are more bound to forested areas like in Siberia, where nobody goes, right? Where there are thousands of miles of forest, dense, dark, deep forest, where all kinds of elves and werewolves could hide. But anyway, they're halfway between LA and San Diego, an hour south of LA. We went to that Ortega Highway. We went to that San Juan Capistrano and those lakes, and there's a hot spring there that's really amazing. But I haven't seen that elfin forest. And so now Paul tells me about this, and if he had told me about it while we were there, I would probably have said, no, I'm not going to that elfin forest. I'm too scared. So what happened there was in the 1600s or 1700s, obviously there were no hate groups. It wasn't developed areas. LA and San Diego were like little villages at that time, and everything in between was nature, just like Yellowstone, just like Yosemite, in between those two cities or villages. And there was this really, really large elfin forest. And near that, or next to that elfin forest, was this woman living in a house with her children. She had like 5 children. Back then, they had a lot of children. And forgot the name now. And a settler lady, apparently, or maybe early 1800s or something, or maybe it was actually after. I don't know. The settlers, they took over in the around the 1850s, so maybe it was more like around 1870 or something when that happened. They still had they still burned witches at that time, believe it or not. They still burned witches 100 years ago in some areas. So there's still some areas in South America where this is actually still happening. And they do it in Islam. So if Islam takes over, Bye bye freedom, bye bye safety. So that's why I am desperately hoping and praying for the AGI robots to take over so that time cannot be reverted back into the Stone Ages. But anyway, around 1870 or something, there was this lady living, and people accused her of being a witch. I don't know what led up to this belief. Probably bullshit, maybe some people were jealous of her because she was pretty. And there was a white community, and that lady was white, and they were settlers, and they were all crazy on religion and real bad, like Catholic, evangelical, Lutheran, whatever, totally fanatic and all of that. And they accused her of being a witch, and then some people went out there and burned down her house. And her 5 children were in the house. She was not there at that time. She was not in her house. And the children burned down. And she comes back to the house burnt down, and her children burned down. And maybe animals. They didn't talk about this. Innocent living beings burned down because of a shit religious belief based on ego and disconnect. And she was devastated. She was screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And I would have done the same. Screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And then they had the nerve to accuse her of having set the fire. And they hung her. And right before she was hung, she said to them, "I will come back, and I will make your life a living hell." And those were her last words. They hung her, and after that, she appeared in different places in that elfin forest. And I'm sure she did do what she promised to do. I'm sure she absolutely terrorized these people that burned down her house and her children and hung her. She absolutely terrorized and tormented them. And I don't blame her a bit. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because we need to go deeper than this. This is this is a situation that is being repeatedly told, and I don't even know if it's true, but it could be true, could very well be true. Okay. Her anger is coming from real hurt, from real injustice. She's really angry about that injustice. And I don't blame her one bit. I feel for that woman 100%. I could cry forever. I cry with her. I cry with you forever. But let's do that. Let's cry. Let's cry about this. Let's not lash out again. Let's not lash out on other people. The moment you get into that cycle of samsara, of coming back, being totally unrestful in your energy, and being in Bardo and coming back and terrorizing people for over 100 years, this has been going. That's not the way to do it. And here's what Paul told me. He said when he was going to Venice High School, they were teenagers, they had a friend, and this friend, and they were all talking about that elfin forest and that witch. That was a very popular subject. And this friend said, "I'm gonna check that witch out." And that friend was kind of like a little bit, very ego, very boasting, very, very bold type of, kind of sociopathic type of person, I guess, according to what happened to him in that elfin forest, judging from that. Because there were people that went there and nothing happened. But anyway, that bold guy, he said, "I'm going to drive down there alone at night. I'm going to drive through that elfin forest on that highway that goes through the forest." And he did. And suddenly he sees in the middle of that forest, he sees a very deep blue light shining through the trees from the middle of the forest. And that blue light came closer, and then suddenly he sees a screaming lady in the middle of that highway. In front of him, like 200 feet or so, in the middle of the road. And she was standing there staring at him with wide open eyes, with her hands up, screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And he said he got scared. He knew it was the witch, and he would not stop to get out to say, "Can I help you with something?" Instead, he drove over her. I mean, if I see a woman standing there, whether that is a ghost or in Bardo or in the Beyond or an apparition or a video game character or even if it's some kind of Pokemon game or what, or even if it is it's a straw figure or a dummy doll or whatever that is, or living being, I'm not going to drive over that thing. No way. I would at least drive around, right? Have the courtesy to drive around this. But he drove over her, and obviously that's not a living being. That was an apparition, a ghost. Right? And the ghost then clung to the back of his truck, crawled up to the back window, and hammered while he was driving, speeding. She was stuck on the window, hammering against the window, and screaming and screaming and screaming. And he just raced and raced and raced and raced until he got to the next community and driving into a gas station, and there she was gone. And he never went back to that elfin forest. So that could be made up, of course. Like, believe nothing that you hear, right? I think Benjamin Franklin said that. Believe nothing that you hear. Investigate things for yourself. That would be a wise thing to do. Okay. So, and I'm not gonna believe this hook, line, and sinker, that story. Paul said he believed it at that time. He doesn't believe it anymore now. But I keep a little percentage open and say, what if it did happen to him? What if that guy's a total jerk and the lady can clearly see that, and he's just another one of those jerks that would probably hang someone and he would have no problem with it. And so that's the same jerk energy, and she goes for those. She hates those, and I don't blame her. I mean, I understand the anger and all of this, but this is not how we make the world a better place. We cannot make the world a better place. We cannot make the world a better place by being stuck in those anger mental states, revenge and all of that. And some people are in revenge just for having their ego bruised or something. So that's even worse. But even if someone is angry about total injustice, we don't make the world a better place by going out there hunting, haunting, and terrorizing people. That's not going to make the world a better place. Definitely. And it doesn't make the world a better place if you stay stuck in those kind of mental states. And that can happen while we're alive. This can carry on while the mind goes out of the body. Okay? Because the mind is not bound to the body. So when you're outside of your vessel and you carry on with that energy of hate, that does not make the world better. That doesn't make your mental state better. That does not help you to move on. You have to completely let go. You have to surrender. And if I talk to that witch, I say, I'm here for you. I love you unconditionally. I totally understand you. And I want to tell you it's safe to let go. It's safe to let go. 100%. Let go, surrender. Surrender to that what is. To the infinite, to the truth. Not surrender to some person. That's not surrender. Surrender to the truth. And that's the inwardness process. And then you move on. And it's already an hour long, the video, which makes me a little bit nervous. And then I start stuttering and saying some wrong words in the wrong order and all of that. But anyway, there's one more story now that I want to end the video with. Actually, two more stories, but I don't know if I have enough time for this, but I will try. Okay. I want to tell the story that John Allen told about airline pilots that got killed in the Everglades through an airplane crash. I don't want to tell the whole story in detail, just say this airplane crashed and there were four pilots on board. Two were flying, one co-pilot. The other one was sitting behind them, and another one was there that was also on board, flying with them to get to another location. They were just flying from New York to Florida. And I have been, and I think I've been on exactly those airplanes, the same types. United Airlines, that was a new model in the 70s, but we were there in 1980, so just a few years later, and flew exactly. If I had known that then about that story, I would not have gone on that flight. But so it was in 1972, Those were real new, brand new at that moment. I don't like the word brand. They were factory new at that time. And apparently there were some lights that didn't work, but it only had to do with the lamp, that the light bulb itself. Everything else was working, but that caused this confusion. They they went to the Everglades and let the airplane rotate there in midair, and then they couldn't figure out about the light, and then before they knew it, the fuel was running out because they were also already supposed to have landed, but they were still circling, and then the airplane very gradually descended down into the Everglades. And because of this gradual descending and the Everglades buffering the airplane with the shrubs and that swamp and several feet of water, about I think it was like 72 people survived, but 90 something people died in it. So, but if they had plunged like all the way down, straight down, then nobody would have survived. But because of this, 72 people survived. Some were badly injured. It's horrible, absolutely horrific. But three of those pilots died in that crash. And then what they did is they salvaged parts from that airplane that had crashed, because that was a new airplane and some of those parts were so good, and they used those, embedded those into new models that they made. And in every one of the new models that had one of the parts from that crashed airplane, people started to see ghosts, started to see those dead airplane pilots and other people that had died in that crash. And that was very frightening for people, very, very frightening. Some of the flight attendants reported being absolutely terrified in that lounge area. They felt a presence there. And then some people saw that one pilot that was sitting in a seat, and because he was sitting in one of the passenger seats, they had one passenger too many, and they could not figure out how this is possible. And the flight attendant talked to that guy, and he just stared straight ahead. And then she called another pilot to come over, and the pilot looked at him close up and said, this close, several feet in front of a ghost, and said, "Oh my gosh, that's that guy I forgot the name of. That is that airline pilot. I have known him. He died in that crash." And the moment he said that, the ghost vanished right in front of all of these people, including passengers that saw this whole spectacle. The passengers were screaming. Everyone is like, they could not understand it. They couldn't believe that this would happen to them, that they would actually see something like this. And the airline company, they brushed it under the rug because they didn't want the word to get out, but the word got out anyway of this. But that still didn't deter people from flying with them. So some people like this kind of stuff. So there are people that will go to haunted houses and stuff. Baby dog, come back here. Elon. Okay. But on another flight, and this is this is the subject I want to bring up. And none of those ghosts were really mean, or they didn't do anything mean. They just sat there. Maybe one of them had some kind of like may have the one in the lounge that didn't show him itself. Maybe that had some kind of, like, he's still in shock over what happened. Basically, he's in shock over the fact that he's dead, and that wasn't planned, to his ego or something. So he's mad that he's not in the physical anymore, and then because of that he's coming back there, because of the one of the parts being in that new airplane. So that could be, but that was the meanest that they did. So just like one angry Bardo energy, right? Angry Bardo energy, but they didn't terrorize anyone like that, like the witch did. So, but they were still hanging on, hanging, and this has been seen and witnessed by so many people. This has been written into their record books of that airline company. They have hidden these records even because they didn't want the public to freak out. But people found those journals from the staff that work there that have witnessed those things, because they have to make journal on how the flight went and all of this. And many, many, many people have written stuff like this and have seen the same things also in the same at the same time. There was another flight, and I think that was the last one, where before that those apparitions stopped. There was another flight where they also had part in there. Same flight from New York to Florida. And in the very beginning, before the airplane even started, one of the pilots went down to check on stuff and suddenly sees one of the dead airline pilots that he had known, another one, a different one. And I could see from the photo, they showed the photo of that particular airline pilot. That's he looks Russian, and he has a real kind, generous, compassionate face. That guy, photo taken when he was still alive, obviously, in his uniform. And so this one guy suddenly sees that guy in his uniform, just like a real person. And that guy comes up to him with a real serious facial expression and says, there's something wrong with the technology in some area of that airplane. And he instructed him how to fix that. And that guy was so shocked that this dead guy was coming up to him, giving him instructions on how to fix something. He didn't know what to say. He didn't say anything. He was just standing there with his mouth open. But the ghost was insistent and said, you have to go down there and fix this. And I tell you exactly how to fix this. And, they're all informed somewhat about the technology. So he went down there and he fixed that, what this dead airline pilot told him to do. And he saw that it needed to be fixed. He saw that he was 100% right to fix this. And then they went on the flight, and the flight was safe, and they landed safely, and nothing happened. If he had not fixed that the live pilot said, if he had not fixed that, they would have crashed. The ghost saved this entire airplane, saved 300 or 400 people that fit into it. Ghost saved 400 people. Now, a ghost can also come back in order to save people's lives. Okay, so, and that comes out of love. That does not come out of bardo or clinging or ego or any of that. That comes out of love. And that story touches me to tears. Absolutely touches me to tears. That's amazing. Really amazing. And those things do happen. So weird stuff happens. And sometimes love happens. And there's love energy. And sometimes there are people out of their bodies and they come back with love energy. They come back to help. There was another story that I heard that someone else told a couple of years ago where a naked lady appears in the middle of the night on the side of a highway, right in front of a ravine that went into a forest. And people saw her, many people saw her, but most people kept driving until one guy stopped and he said, "Can I help you? What's going on?" And she said, "Follow me." And he followed this woman down the ravine. And there she disappeared into a crushed car. And he looked in there, and suddenly he sees her there, dressed, dead, on her steering wheel. And in the back of her car is her little boy, 3 years old, and he's still alive. And he rescues that little boy. And the lady did that out of love to bring someone down there to rescue her boy. So these things happen. So we need to always be aware that we have to surrender and we have to do things out of love and kindness for another living being. And there's one more story. It's already a long video now, but there's one more story to end the video with. And that story I heard yesterday from John Allen and Mr. Ballen. And that story is about a guy who lived 10 years of his life finding a woman, having children with her, having a happy life. Suddenly sees, I'm just making the story short because I'm running out of time now. I mean, I don't, but video is long. So 10 years of happiness with this dream woman, dream children, dream house, everything wonderful, wonderful job. I don't know if he was retired finally. They have a very peaceful life, and he's watching TV one night after 10 years of this life, and he sees a lamp in his room, one of his lamps in his room, like a table lamp, that suddenly looks like it's digital. It's a digital image. It's not even, doesn't look real. And he's wondering what's going on. And then he kept staring at the lamp. This went on for several days. His wife goes in there and says, "Well, why do you keep looking at that lamp?" And he wouldn't tell her because he was afraid that he maybe loses his mind. He doesn't want to admit to that. But I think it's a form of anosognosia. It's a form of anosognosia where the mind goes into a state of denial. Okay, so the whole thing has been actually a state of denial. Okay, so, and wishful thinking and all of these kind of things can become very vivid. So that's the case for Dr. Oliver Sacks. He would have loved to study that case for sure. He studied those weird cases of neurological phenomena. So you see this lamp, and then he kept on looking at the lamp, and his wife got worried about him, but he finally he couldn't sleep because of this. He went down in the basement where he had that TV room. He slept on that couch, kept on looking at that lamp, kept on looking and looking and looking. And the lamp started to morph and turn upside down and become bigger and blow up like a digital image, and then brighter and brighter and brighter. And suddenly he wakes up, he's lying on his back on some kind of lawn in the middle of the day. And when he was looking at the lamp, it was nighttime. And suddenly he wakes up looking into the sun that's above him. Bright daylight, like during the day, like 1 or 2 p.m. And then he sees all these people standing there looking at him, worried. 20 people looking at him. Police car comes. They thought he was dead. And police officer picks him up, and they were glad that he's still alive, that he came back to consciousness. And they put him in the police car. He has no idea where he is, what happened. And the police officer said that someone had battered his brain with some kind of club, and he was unconscious for a while. And that's why these people all came over to trying to help him. So he was brought to the hospital to recover, and as he was recovering in the hospital, he started to realize that these entire 10 years of his life were just imaginary. None of this was real. The lamp wasn't real, the room wasn't real, his family wasn't real. And when he realized that this was all just made up by his brain, like a video game, like a simulation, when he realized this was all just a simulation, all this time was minutest details that he remembers from these 10 years. When he realized this was all just made up by his brain, he cried and cried and cried and cried and cried for days. And he didn't want to talk to anyone anymore. And he couldn't talk anymore. He was in such deep grief over his family. That's like the family died. It's the same thing. I live my life with my beloved dog, the papa dog, and suddenly the papa dog is taken from me. you know and whether the papa dog was just my brain imagining this life, these 3 years I had with him, and it was just a video game that some kid played with me, or that I played, or my brain played, or if it's real or whatever. What is real? you know is this real? But whether it's so-called real, I suffer, therefore I am. Pinch me, tell me that I'm alive. I suffer. I know I'm suffering, obviously. I'm not making this up. I suffer all the time with all kinds of stuff: ego and grief, worries, fear, terror, OCD, real bad. So I suffer. I obviously, whether this is a video game or not, it's a pretty mean one, or if it's real, or whatever is real, whatever we call real. This life that I lived with the papa, I felt it. That's all that matters. That guy felt these 10 years. and suddenly they're gone, and he's in grief. So I'm sure that was definitely an alternate reality. Okay, and it makes you wonder, And I saw the comments of people wondering the same thing. One guy said this can happen to any one of us. Maybe it could. I'm going to tell another story that fits into this theme maybe tomorrow. So it's going to get too long now. But that ties right into this. What if everything is just a simulation of some sort? So, but whether it is or not doesn't matter. I still have to practice mindfulness, kindness for all living beings, whether I'm in physical form or ethereal form or bardo or beyond. I have to practice kindness, okay? And that's what matters. And that's the message of the infinite, okay? You guys take care. Peace and love.